Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com.
Okay, yesterday I had a client of mine starting cold email, and she's got a service, and she asked me if I can give her some templates. And I was very hesitant to that. So I think what good topic for today will be, what advice could we give to a newbie in cold email?
This is going to cover the kind of baby steps that one would take towards quickly setting up a very well thought out and, let's say, productive cold email campaign. This is the early stages when maybe you're first testing the waters to see if cold email is a viable channel for your business.
Yeah.
So maybe if you're already up and running, you might want to pass this by, although chances are there's going to be a few mindset takeaways that are always going to be helpful.
Why don't you kick things off, Jack? What would you say one of the first advice you would give to someone starting in cold email?
All right. The first thing you need to realize is you're going to be bad at cold email in the beginning, most likely. Now, what bad means to you is going to be relative, but it's safe to assume that you'll get better and better with cold email as the weeks progress. So that means don't feel the need to scale up right away because you might be burning through your list. Instead, take it slow, not only because it's good cold email practice to send regularly instead of just a huge volume right away, but you want to send in small batches early on. I'm talking 5 to 10 a day so that you can, with every new thing that you learn along the way, you can sort of save that for when you're ready to unleash it on a larger volume.
That's correct. And on top of that, you're probably going to have to handle rejection, and receiving a couple of rejection, then you can act on it. But receiving like 20 rejection, then that's kind of hard. And by the way, we got episode number 3, how to handle rejection. That's probably a good episode to check out at this stage.
Definitely. And now, speaking of rejection, one of my favorite things we talked about in that episode, which is perfect for people new to cold email, is don't check your cold email inbox right away. Don't check it hourly. You'll be very tempted to, but don't. And the reason why, as we mentioned in the cast, you're going to find that as you let, say, 2 or 3 days go by, you will have, hopefully, a mix of negative and positive replies. Now, those positive replies should provide the motivation you need to carry on. Whereas if you checked it hourly and you get 2 rejection emails, it's so easy to say, this shit doesn't work. I'm done with cold email. Let me go put some money in Facebook ads or something. So
yeah, some of the rejections are brutal sometimes. And
yeah, I think one of the very first rejection emails I got threatened to sue me or report me to the Better Business Bureau. And that's scary to receive. And if I didn't have other positive, productive leads in that same inbox to counter that with, it may have shut me down, which would have been unfortunate. So start small. Don't check that inbox every hour. Leave your smartphone in your pocket. You're going to be okay.
By starting small, what number would you say? For me, I think it will be 3 to 5 new prospects a day max. Would you agree with that?
Oh, cool. I've written down here 5 to 10 a day.
Oh, dude, I think you're way too ambitious for a new starter.
Yeah, it could be that when I was first starting, I had the idea of doing this full time. So my guideline, though, is less about the number and more of, can you do it every single day regularly without burning out? And can you put in enough effort into the actual email as far as personalization goes so that early on you're sending high quality cold emails, if only because you've taken the extra mile and really did some personalization that a lot of people doing volume can't get to?
Well, actually, you probably like touched upon 3 of my advice. One of them being like start manually. And obviously when you're starting manually, doing 5 to 10 is already like a big stretch. But I will definitely say start to do it by hand. Don't start with automations right away. Get a feel for what it is to personalize do as much personalization as you can, get more research being done at the beginning. So you stand a better chance of getting like a positive thing that gets you going. And as you will get more and more positive things, then you will be able to understand what is the dynamic of my email, what makes it resonate with people. And then you move to automation. Don't start right away with automation because you're going to do some mistakes and you don't want them to be amplified by automation straight away.
So, Jeremy, when you say do it manually and personalize the messages, especially in the beginning, right? And we're talking manually written, very personalized emails. Let's talk a little bit about some of the personalization a cold email newbie should be including in their first emails.
Well, this is the funny thing is that I think that when people use a tool versus when they're actually writing manually, they basically write different things. As if, when I'm writing manually to you, Jack, I'm going to use a certain tone, or to someone I don't know, I'm going to use a certain tone, use some personalization, and suddenly I move to automation. And if I haven't done this manual step before, I would write something completely generic, boilerplate kind of thing, even with some personalization, but they're not really interesting because most of the time people communicate to the mass versus communicate it to one person. And that's a critical mistake to people new to cold email, I would say.
So if you're listening, I would hit the rewind, the 30-second button here, because what Jeremy just said is so true. And it really marks the difference between great campaigns and average campaigns. It's this mentality of we're writing to the masses or writing to John or Jeremy or Sandy. And actually, now that we talk about personalization, I imagine that if you're writing them by hand, you probably don't need us telling you how to customize it for that individual. All I can add is you can find talking points on people's LinkedIn profiles, company websites, and also where you went to find them. So the next point I have here is take a list and make it really narrow so that you're talking to your very best potential buyers. If you've been in business for a little while, you probably have a great idea of who your customer is. When you start out with cold email, take a small list of a great customer set and segment it. If you're not sure how to segment it really small, my advice would be to find customers you haven't engaged with already that are in your city. So this brings you a little bit closer to these prospects. You can have this location similarity to share. So conversation will come a little bit easier if you're, writing from across the street as you were from across the country. So long story, when you decide how you will cut your list into a really small group, that's going to be a talking point that you can include as well. So you may say things like, hey, I'm over in, the Bird Rock area, saw you're in downtown San Diego, would love to chat. Like that works a whole lot better than trying to reach someone very far away if you're just starting out.
If you have a business already and then you want to start cold email and you have a proven business, then I will actually start analyzing my current clients and then we'll try to find similarities or some potential client that I could go after that shares a lot of things in common. That way, that gives me a little bit of an edge as to I know those clients will benefit if I contact them and they go on board.
For example, let's say you're going to reach out to me and you know that Jack does a cold email lead generation stuff. If you already happen to have a client or two in that space and you sent me a message saying this has helped other cold email lead generation agencies, you've got my attention. You've at least signaled that, okay, this is definitely something that others just like me are using to get what I want. I'm going to read the rest of this message. So it comes down to just getting very granular with who you will reach out to. And in the beginning, luckily, you can afford to do this because you're reaching out to about 5 people a day. You can afford to do 10 to 15 minutes of internet research, grab your 5 prospects, find their email, and craft a personal message. So let's talk about finding those first email addresses. One of the easiest and quickest ways that you can find email addresses, and this is especially important for those who are in the beginning stages, just use, let's say, a tool like Hunter. I'm a big fan of it. It's really simple to use and it finds email addresses. You just need the first name, last name, and the company that the people work for. If you've got that, hunter.io will try its best to find a valid email address for you, and you're done. It will also verify it so that you know it won't bounce. Okay, so that's probably the easiest way to find emails, short of someone listing it on their LinkedIn profile in their contact section or on a website. Don't worry so much about finding the best tool. For right now, Hunter can help. It's not that complicated. There's a lot of tools, but keep it simple in the beginning. By the way, I had mentioned using Hunter to verify an email address. Jeremy, why is that important for people just starting out?
That actually touched on something else I want to say, but let's explore what you just mentioned here. Having bounces is like super bad because it signals that you're basically trying to reach out to people you don't know. And having a few bounces are like okay, but having it with most of the people that you're contacting is not going to be okay. On top of that, if you spend a lot of time researching people, I would probably verify their email first before I actually send them an email. Because if I spend like 20 minutes crafting an email or 15 minutes trying to craft an email for them specifically, and then it bounces in my face, that's not fun, right? And you'll need to find out other ways to get their emails, maybe ask them on Twitter or some other things, which will almost like invalidate your sort of like first email approach. So I will verify it first. On top of that, if you have too many bounces, then you may experience some problems. And that's also one of the reasons why you want to start very small, 3 to 5, because with volume, you have different problem that comes into play. And Google may shut you down because you got too many bounces or too many people flag you as spam. Where if you send a very small amount of email and it's like part of all the other emails that you're sending that are like totally legit, then I think that's less of a problem.
Another word of advice to you if you're just starting out with cold email, try 2 very different approaches. So it's not so much about 2 different templates. Templates are just, something you copy and paste and fill in the blanks. That's not where the real wins will come from. Instead, you're trying 2 approaches here. So one approach you may see if you can start a conversation by asking people if they're happy with the tool that they're currently using, just because you're trying to do some research. And the other approach, let's make it radically different. Let's say, see if you can get a response from them asking to check out a video because it helps them with XYZ. Seeing which approach is going to get you the most productive conversations. But please try 2 different things. One of them will work much better than the other.
Yeah, I love it. This is exactly the time where you can afford doing that. And funny enough, just a word of advice for people who's been in it for a long time, they may not experiment enough of that, right? They sort of like find something that works and sort of like stick with it, where they could find thing that actually will help them in the long run. So a healthy dose of experimentation is very important. And at the beginning, you can afford doing that. But it's funny, the 2 examples you mentioned are actually already really good, where I would guess that most of the rookie will try to sell people on a spot or point at things that people do wrong. All the sort of like typical mistake that people do at the beginning. So I would say a word of advice for people starting up is refrain yourself from trying to shorten the sales cycle as much as possible. Instead, take a few steps back and try to really start a conversation with someone, being open that it may actually lead nowhere. And that way, I think you get a much better chance of people replying and engaging with you because you're not trying to push your agenda, but you're actually trying to learn and being open to things. And I'd like to bounce on the templates that you brought up quickly. I know you're against like providing templates to people. Can you explain why?
Templates don't understand your business and your prospects. So I can give you a template that worked awesome for me, but
yeah, please.
But maybe the reason it worked so well was because I sent it to a list of people that truly needed what I talked about in that email. And I wrote it in a way that I offered something like dead simple to respond to. Now, I could give you that exact same template, but if you sent it to a lukewarm list and you started talking, even if you use my same words, but you sent it to a person who doesn't really care about what you're saying, then results are like, you can't assume that because a template worked in one market, it will work in another. So instead, what I think is more powerful than templates is it's experimenting with your list, finding the hottest list of prospects that really need what you have to offer. And second is playing with this value proposition that you're able to deliver to your prospects. So it's what you can offer. Maybe it's a video, maybe it's advice, maybe it's gathering feedback so you can share, some solutions, a case study that wows them. It's this approach that's going to move the needle most dramatically than it is like Googling for like the magic template that may have worked in one market.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, Googling for the magic template. So true. The other piece of thing that I will add on this one is, there is what we call strategy and tactics. A template is only providing you some specific actionable thing, in a certain context, as you were just mentioning, where the strategy is the overall understanding of what we're trying to achieve. And when you're hunting for templates, you're actually not learning the strategy. You're only learning that tactic. You use it, and when it runs out, then you say, like, okay, I need to find another template that works. Because don't fool yourself. Templates are limited in time. But on the internet, you see templates that are 5 years old, that worked 5 years ago, but don't work anymore. And you come as a disadvantage. So instead, don't learn the tactics, but actually learn the strategy. What is this template trying to achieve? Oh, it's trying to find out ways to connect with people. Well, how can we connect with people this year? And that's the sort of thing. You can generate an infinite amount of tactics, an infinite amount of templates when you understand the strategies perfectly. But the opposite doesn't work.
And especially in the beginning, I wouldn't recommend relying on templates. Instead, rely on heavy personalization. Sending 3 to 5 emails a day, you can afford to take some time, make them very personal.
Totally.
All right, 2 more from me, Jeremy. I'm going to say send 3 follow-ups. Follow up on your cold emails because it's such an important element to a great cold email campaign. And a lot of people don't do it, especially beginners. Just look at the cold emails you receive. I'd imagine that 90% of them don't have a follow-up included in your inbox. Like, it's surprisingly underused. But what is the stat, Jeremy? Is it 59% of replies come after the first email?
Yeah, something around that. I know I never reply to the first email. I'm like so busy, I always wait for the follow-up. If it's not important, then people will send follow-up. And if you want to know how to write the perfect follow-up email, then check out our podcast number 6.
I'd recommend sending 3 follow-ups. You can space them 3 or 4 or 5 days apart. That's fine. The idea is that you stay on top of the prospects and don't take it personal if they don't write back to you right away. Just like Jeremy said, he uses it as a filter. If you think you're being a little bit too intrusive, just remember the end value you can deliver these prospects. And if you truly can change their lives or their business, you owe it to them to follow up. Believe me, they're going to thank you if it's a good fit.
Oh, one more thing that talking about, I mentioned a couple of episodes that you guys can check out if you want to know a bit more. I would say on a general note, listen to Teardowns. Listen to our Teardowns because you'll get straight away into the mindset or how to approach an email and why an email is really bad and what you should pay attention to. There are so many, pretty much in all the teardowns we do, there is always like 1 or 2 mistakes, rookie mistakes that people make that you can avoid straight away by just knowing it. Like the me, like trying to be like too writer focused instead of being recipient focused, or having a confusing value proposition or a weak call to action. Those sort of things are easy to spot and understand as soon as you listen like a couple of our teardowns kind of thing. So I would say definitely don't hunt for templates, actually hunt for teardowns instead. One other thing I would say, if you want to be successful at cold email, you have to do it every day. So try to allocate a certain a time per day, like maybe it's your lunchtime, or maybe it's the morning when you wake up, or maybe at the end of the day, but allocate some time each day and then just do it consistently. Because I can guarantee you that you're going to reap out the benefits of doing something consistently. If you're serious about it, then you have to dedicate some time to it. It's not something that you could say like, all right, now I have to do it, and then you rush 3 hours. That's not how you're going to build the habit of actually writing good cold emails. And if you want to check out the theory behind it, check out the 20-mile march. I think you're going to get a kick out of this if you don't know about it.
Now, speaking about being regular with your cold email, sending every day, my last tip has to do with how many prospects you reach out to before deciding to quit or to scale. Now, my magic number here is at least 100 prospects. Now, if you're sending about 5 a day, it should take you, let's say, between 1 and 2 months to get all of your prospects through your cold email sequence if you've got some follow-ups attached to it. Now, in those 2 months, you should be able to learn from a lot of replies and tweak your emails so that you're getting good responses. You should be able to also make some sales within that time frame if your sales cycle allows it. In short, sending to at least 100 prospects should give you some results. And if it doesn't, you may need to radically change your approach. Maybe try a different audience, try a different value proposition, offer them something else. Or you may already have success in this first 100 prospect list. Either way, do not give up until you've reached out to at least 100 people and followed up accordingly with them.
And if you're not getting enough replies, then you could always check out our episode 49, what to do when you're not getting replies. One thing I will bounce on actually on what you just said, and we completely forgot about in this cast, is what number should I expect? What open rate should I expect? What reply rate should I expect? What positive reply rate should I expect? So here are some numbers for you. I would personally say that if you're starting from an inbox that's been working fine, you should definitely aim for 60% open rate. So you can install some tools like Signal or Banana Tag to figure out your open rate. This is not necessarily super important at the beginning because usually your inbox is working fine. But I would say in terms of reply rate, aim for 10% at the beginning because the 10% mark is where there is a sort of like interest that could actually lead to something great. And keep on fine-tuning it or changing your approach until you reach 20%. When you reach 20%, you're like in good water. If you get anything under 10, review your approach. There's something wrong. Maybe your value proposition is confusing or you're contacting the wrong people or whatever, but there's something not good under 10%. Above 10%, you're good. 20%, you can move to something else. And in terms of positive reply rate, which means number percent of rejection or not interested versus person interested, like Jack said, usually just aim for 50-50. You're going to have a lot of rejection or people not interested. It's okay. Just make sure that some people are interested.
So here's an offer for listeners of the podcast. If you're just starting out with cold email and you feel like something is there, but you're just not getting the early on response that you were hoping for, just drop me a message. Go to emails.sell.com and share your approach with me. I'll get back to you with some tips that may help you lift your response rate to where you want it to be. Just mention that you heard this from the podcast and I'll give you an eye. Why not take advantage of it? I'd love to find out how you're doing with cold email.
And my final tip, another problem that I see in people starting is do spend at least as much effort on crafting your email as you spend it on researching new prospects. Because it's all too easy to spend 90% of your time or 95% of your time on what you're crafting and only 5% of your time on who you're contacting. And as we've discussed in many podcasts already, who you're contacting is at least as important as what you tell them. But if you want to hear more about it, this is podcast 8, Copy versus List.
And if you think right now that your email content, your writing is more important than who you reach out to, you definitely need to listen to that podcast because it will change your mind on where you see your priorities in cold email.
Well, there you go. How to become a pro emailer in under 20 minutes.
That's right. So if you're just getting started, you're going to hopefully have an amazing journey with cold email. I hope it changes your business and in a small way or maybe a big way your life like it has done for me and Jeremy. So anyways, enjoy, use some of these tips, send some awesome emails and make it happen.
There you go. Thanks, Jack.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. To wrap up the cast, I'm going to read the top 3 pieces of advice from Jeremy and I about beginning your cold email campaign. Number 1, start small and do it manually until you have something that works. Number 2, don't rush your sales process. Instead, focus on starting a conversation. And finally, number 3, experiment widely and don't forget to follow up. Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you. If you got some value from this episode, give us a high five by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast.
So they can send awesome emails.
And make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.